We are ready to roll. We got everything hooked up, so Shannon, if you want to start us off.
The first appeal is MHL LLC. Mr. Nooney is representing the property owner and Rod from my office.
This is Main Street.
All right. Good morning, Board. Rod Slutton. I'm the Senior Commercial Appraiser for the county. And we're going to be talking about MHL LLC. This should be the first one in your packet there, tax ID 37327. So this is located, this building is at 512 Main. We originally assessed this property at $4,016,500. This property did go through the City Board of Equalization. They reduced the value from the $4 million to $1.678800. We then brought that decision back to county in front of you today, where I'm making the recommendation of $2,709,200. So, like I said, this property is at 512 Main. This is right next to the fountains there, the ice rink in the wintertime. This building was built in 1947 and went through a full renovation in 2012. Roughly $4 million was put into this property as a renovation. Really, I'm just going to touch on a couple of points. First of all, this is this value that I'm recommending, the 2.7, that's based from an income approach. So first of all, why do we use the income approach for these properties? Well, first of all, the law appoints us to, we've talked about this before, 10.633 tells us to use cost, sales, and income to consider all those reconciled to the best, the one that makes the most sense. So in this case, we do have a cost value for this. It's over $5.5 million. And I think this is a good example of why we use the income approach. We have properties like this that have a lot of money invested into it. It's great for downtown. It revitalizes downtown. But is it really worth the $5.5 million that our cost tables are indicating? And in this case, I would say no. So we've pivoted to the entire downtown area to be valued on an income basis. So there, the process is given to us through some of our training to use a market approach. So in that process, we're gathering market rents through surveys, through talking to property owners. We're trying to get an idea of what is the market for this specific area. So once we've established what the market rents are and expenses and a market cap rate, then we can determine what typically any investor would use to try to put a value on this, what they would buy or sell it for, based on its potential income, which comes from market rents. So, and even another reason why we've shifted to the income approach for the downtown area. On the flip side of a property like this, we also have properties that are, built in the 20s and the 40s, and you walk into that building and it still looks like the 20s and the 40s. So there's some buildings that are very run down that need a lot of maintenance, but they're still getting rents. They're still getting rents that you could say are market rents for that type of property. So our cost tables have completely depreciated those older buildings out, and when we look at our sales for downtown, we were consistently 80 to 85%. Our opinion of value, our assessed value, was typically 80 to 85% of what they were actually selling for. So when we have a market where we consistently see sales higher than what we anticipated them to sell based on our analysis, that brings our attention to that area. Why are we so low? So that's the flip side of it. We have these rundown buildings that our cost analysis is saying have depreciated out. They're worth the land and a little bit more, but yet they're still getting rents and they're selling for more than what we had anticipated. So those also saw an increase. The average increase downtown was about 12% across the board for everybody. So that's a pretty big increase, but we now are caught up in that neighborhood. So basically, when I say downtown, between the boulevards. So East Boulevard to West Boulevard, essentially, Main Street, St. Joe, just kind of that corridor. It kind of aligns with the zoning for that area as well. But now our sales or our values are now more similar to the actual sales. We're at about a 90 to 95% ratio instead of a 80 to 85% ratio. So that's why we have to use the income approach. It equalizes an area like this where we're consistently low in our sales, but it also makes it more fair for properties that have put investment into a building, but yet they're not going to sell for as much money as they've put into it. So that's why we use the income approach. So now maybe I'll just kind of touch on determining the market. So on the first page there, if you've gone through the packet, just touching on codified law 10.4.2, the director of equalization is to value improvements to the land and all rights and privileges thereto belonging. All rights and privileges. So if we were to value all rights and privileges, that means absolute ownership unencumbered by any other interest or estate. Now that's the definition of fee simple. Unencumbered by any other interest, so unencumbered by debt obligations, unencumbered by mortgages, unencumbered by a management decision to charge less than market rents. Those are all things that would encumber a property. So we are not to consider those things. We are not directed to value the property according to the ownership interest held by the leaser or the lessor, which would include the right to receive contract rent. That is the definition of leased fees. So I'm really just comparing the idea of fee simple, which is to use market rents, and leased fee, which is to simply value the contracts that are in place. Some of those leases, in my opinion, in this particular property are well below market. And so that's one of the reasons why the appraisal that the appellant has given would indicate a much lower value, because they are getting rents that are, in some cases, considerably below market. That's okay. We'll still, even when we create our modeling for when we try to determine market, we're taking all these leases, even the leases from this property, they're in our model. So when we have enough of those leases, we can still indicate what is typical and what is normal. We're going to have some outliers. We're going to have some that are below. We're going to have some that are above. But when we have enough of these, and on the second page of the packet that I gave, what I'm showing you there are all the leases that are just in the downtown area. So if you look at some of these addresses, they're only St. Joe and Main. So I have 54 leases here that are just St. Joe and Main. So I've excluded, I have over 300 leases in our model. We have 154 leases just for downtown. So I've only put on here leases that I feel are comparable to the subject. So in other words, older buildings, only on Main Street, only on St. Joe or between those two. So when I just grab those, and these are the most comparable leases, I've highlighted the appellants in yellow. They take up mostly the bottom portion of this data set. This kind of, to us, this indicates that the middle is right around $12 a square foot. That's pretty typical for what we see downtown. That's what I would expect typically for a property like this. If I were to compare some of their leases, and I don't know exactly what you're looking at, but I think you all have maybe a copy of the appraisal that the appellant.
That was included.
Okay.
What is that, a copy of what?
The appraisal that the appellant submitted?
An appraisal from Mr. Simpson that was done as of November 1 of last
Last
year.
page,
Okay, so everybody's got it.
last
Cool.
page.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So, so on page 75, turn there, you'll see what they've kind of used to determine
Go to 75 on
what they call base rents. Page 75 of the appraisal that was submitted. So looking at what they've used to determine what are market rents, none of these properties are in this downtown corridor. Additionally, the lowest, so they have 30 different leases there. The lowest one they have is $5.18. That's the 30th, that's the lowest. The 29th, or the second to lowest, is nearly $10 a square foot. So I would consider that lowest one that they have to be an extreme outlier. But then when they say their market rents are, ranging from 4 to 6 on some of their property, or some of their leases, they're saying those $4 and $6 leases are considered market rents. That's even lower than their data set, and the outlier on their data set is half of their next lowest. So my point is simply, the rents that they have, some of them, not all of them, but some of them are well below market. This appraisal is actually a very good appraisal for simply valuing the leases that are in place. But some of those leases are below market. And I think I've indicated that on page 2 by just showing where they lie just with the true comparables. I've showed that with their page 75 that their lowest at 518 is still higher than what they've marked as market rents between $4 and $6. If you look at, so that's probably the last reference to the actual appraisal. Again, I think it's a very good appraisal, but it's simply valuing the leases that are in place, and we're not directed to, as an assessor's office, we have to look at the true market rates. My opinion of value is supported on page 3 of this handout, which is just my summary. So on page 3, all I've really done is I've taken all these other numbers that aren't highlighted in blue. That's simply from their spreadsheet. I just copied everything from their database, but I put it all on one page just so you can kind of compare my opinion of market rents versus what they have. My range is between $8 and $13. That lines up with what I'm seeing down there. When I use true market rates, I end up at that value of 2.7. The 1.6 that the appellant is asking for, I don't know how they got to that number. From what I understand, it's just kind of a residual number that just they had to land on because the original appraisal was for 3 different buildings, but there's simply no support for the 1.6. So that's the income side of it. I'll touch real quick on the sales side of it. And I'm just using the sales comps, so now I'm looking at page 5.
Rod?
Yeah.
Chair, can I ask him a question? So if you do income-based and you do it for this year, what happened? Are you taking their past income-based as well? Because if you're taking it are you just taking it for 1 year, or are you taking it for the 5-year total? Do you see what I'm saying? Because next year, your income-based might be a lot lower, a lot higher, and the year after it might be a lot lower, a lot higher. What
Right.
happens when your unit,
Sure.
okay,
So we're not looking individually at everybody's individual income, because that, in this case, is using rents that are below what I would consider to be market.
right,
So we're looking at what is typical in the market for average rents and average expenses. There may be a year where someone has more expenses. Typically, you're going to cover that with reserves, which we consider in our management expense.
right,
So we don't just take a bad year from one person and say, because your cash flow was low, we're going to lower your value. We only look at the market rents, what typically would be common in that market.
okay.
So it's not,
and location and different stuff, but they show you the income-based, and then they tell you, that's what I'm saying, if their outliers are low or high, and then you're looking at what other people have sent you, or that you know from their comparables. Basically, you're doing a comparable with theirs in order to make bottom line,
Mhm.
your determination.
yeah, so I've looked at, like I said, 150 some leases in downtown. That's what's going to tell me what market is.
Okay.
So when I look at theirs, if I'm seeing that typical market rents between $8 and $15, that's normal. That's what everybody's getting. And then they show me, well, we've decided to only do 4 for whatever reasons, or 6, then we're not using his exact rents because they can get higher rents. If someone's going to buy this property, any investor that's going to look at it, they're going to say, well, what kind of rents could I get? What's common in the market? If they have, a lease that's going to be up, I think 5 of these leases are probably already up in '24. New leases are going to come out. If someone was to buy this, they're going to look at new leases. So they're going to make that determination based on the market.
And then you're gonna look at the buildings, the condition, all that stuff, market
Yeah.
value wise. Then you're gonna use the income. So basically, you're using all 3 approaches in order to find out the bottom line on the properties, to get a better
We're-
feel of what it should be worth.
We're looking at all 3 approaches. We have a cost value. It's not
Right.
fair and
Yep.
equitable.
Yep.
We have an income value, which is how these are bought and sold, so this is the most comparable. And then I was just going to touch quickly on the sales comparables, which we use to just say these should be within range, they should be within reason, because it's an actual sale.
And that's funny, because that's what I was talking about yesterday. If you used all 3, you would probably find a better comparable, and that's what you did in order to find out the bottom line. And I didn't know that you guys used all 3 when you were doing some of this, and then you just proved it through your packet. I appreciate that, because I was thinking you're just using income approach, and then I'm like, okay, if you just base it on that, you're in trouble. You already know. If you just use one approach, you're gonna have to use all 3 on commercial or non-owner occupied or otherwise,
Sure.
so. Thank you.
So just real quick, you can see the sales there. These are a little bit smaller buildings, but they are right next to this. So when the per unit comparison that I use is leasable square feet, so I'm simply taking what did it sell for divided by what's the leasable square feet. So on page 5, in that little square at the top there, you can see that it's indicating right around $96 per square foot would be common for these comps of leasable space. My recommendation at the 2.7 puts this at $90 per square foot. The appellant's request at 1.6 puts it at $56 per square foot. We don't have any sales that would support $56 per square foot. There's just nothing that would support that. And then so we've kind of touched on the 3 approaches. There is kind of a 4th, not necessarily approach, but there's a 4th argument we hear a lot, and that is equity. We hear it a lot with big box, I want to be the same as Walmart, I want to be the same as Menards or whatever. So equity is often brought to our office as an argument. So in an equity discussion, we'd want to look at the most similar types of properties. So for example, we have the Creamery Mall over on Main Street. That's a building that was renovated similar. They have about 22,000 square feet. This property has about 30,000 square feet of leasable space. Our value for that property is $86 a square foot for its leasable space. So now we're just talking equity. Is this recommendation within reason of the way everything else is being valued? So Creamery Mall, $86 a square foot. It's not nice as this property. It hasn't been renovated quite as much. And then on the other side, you have the old Landstroms building. Now that's just outside of this, East-West Boulevard.
I'm sorry, what was that building?
The old Landstroms building
On the right side.
over on Canal.
The gap.
Oh, that's
Dakota
way
Point
for,
Brewery's at, yeah.
Yeah, the Dakota Point Brewery.
You redid it.
Familiar with it?
and they redone it and okay.
Okay, so that's another property, very similar to this. That was built in 1928. That has 30,000 square feet of leasable space, same as this one, within a couple of hundred square feet. It has 11 tenants. This one, I think, has 11 as well. It was actually designed by the same architect. I just talked to Dr. Lemley that owns this. He hired the same architect that did the Main Street Square. It's designed very, very similar. Same square footage, same number of tenants. His lowest base rent is $12. They start at $12. He ranges from 12 to 20. So he's
I'm
got.
gonna interrupt you for a second, because I understand where you're going, but I think he's gonna make a completely different argument, and so I wanna help our commission understand where these arguments are coming from. I think you've made a good case for your value, and then Simpson comes as a fee simple appraisal at 3.8. So I think where the argument's coming in, I believe in Mr. Nooney, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that you feel those properties should be taxed upon what you're actually charging for leases. Is that correct?
Chairman Weefenbach, I think the disconnect, I want to make certain I explain this to everyone.
Thank you.
When Ken did the appraisal, there are basically three different tax ID numbers. So when Ken appraised it, it goes everywhere from the Main Street Square you see here on the west, right by the ice skating rink there, all the way down to Cape Pasa. So Ken appraised all three properties. And as the local board went through the process, and I'm not being disrespectful, they looked at it and said, Mr. Simpson said it's worth $3.8 million. We're going to back our way into that number, okay?
Okay.
So what they did is they basically took the value for the middle piece and the end piece and modified that a little bit, but made the biggest change on the 512, which would be the westernmost parcel that we're talking about here today. And the local board put that at 1.6, similar value to what they put on the Cape Pasa property at 1.6 to get to an aggregate of 3.8. So the county elected to only appeal the 512 Main Street assessment. And I think in a nutshell, I can address Mr. Sletton's concerns this way. Rod, and one thing I love about the Director of Equalization, we don't always have to agree with them. They're very good about having dialogue with us, and we appreciate that, okay?
Right.
Because we go through a different process and they go through the appraisal process versus the assessment. We understand that. It's all intended to get to the same place, though. But I think the biggest disconnect, and if you look at Mr. Sletton's handout he's given to you, I take issue to how they got to their conclusion, okay? When Rod and I talked 2 weeks ago, give or take 2 weeks, I think it was, I said, Rod, you guys started at 4, the local board put it at 1.7, you came back at 2.7, so we're basically about $1 million apart. What is driving that difference? And if you look at the page 3 of his handout, I can point out what the difference is, okay? Mr. Sletton takes the position, or I should say the county Director of Equalization takes the position that some of our rents are below market. When Rod and I had a conversation, he said to me, John, the biggest problem we have with your rents are 2 properties, okay? And let's remember, has everyone been in that building?
Sure.
That building's a little unique in one regard, okay? It doesn't just have a main floor and a second floor. What does it also have? A basement, okay? And when the county looked at the rents, and remember, these are actual contract rents. I mean, there are lease agreements in place for these properties.
So just to interrupt you, so you provided them with your contract rents or your lease
Yeah,
rents?
that's all in Mr. Simpson's appraisal.
He knows what they are.
Yep, and if
Okay,
you
perfect.
look at page 3 of his handout to you, or page 73 of Mr. Simpson's appraisal, he's kind of mirroring it, but what he says to you today is, we think some of the rents are below market. When Rod and I talked, he said, John, there's 2 parts of the building that we take big issue with. There's 3,000 square foot below grade that they take issue with. Part of it is rented by the Hildebrand family, and part of it is rented by Destination Rapid City, okay? Those rents, triple net rents, are $6 a foot, okay? And Mr. Sletton says to me, John, that's below market. I don't think it is. First of all, where else in Rapid City are you going to rent subterranean space? I can't think of many. And I asked Rod, send me some comps. If we're wrong, I'm gonna get him to Simpson, and we'll look at what's wrong. He did a very nice job. He sent me their, what I call their matrix or inventory of what rents are, okay? Guess what isn't in their matrix? There isn't a single rent that I can see in here that's subterranean rent, okay?
That's incorrect.
Well, I asked you guys if you had any subterranean rents, and I think your response is, we don't break it out that way, John. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, Mr. Simpson looked at the rents. The rents for that 3,000 square foot is $6, plus there's some triple net costs that go on top of it. That's what the actual rents are. Simpson got to his valuation by doing what any MAI appraiser should do. He looked at the income, put a cap rate to it, got to a value for the whole structure. If you look at the rents on page 3 of the county's handout to you, and Rod, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Many of the rents that you put in your model rents are in fact lower than the actual contract rents, as I look at them. For instance, alternative fuel, the base rent is $15.94. He's telling you it should be $11 a foot. That's what his model rent tells you, I understand that. My point is, we actually have rents above that. But the ones that are real problematic are, Destination Rapid City has 960 square foot below grade, and the rent's $6 a foot. They modeled it at $13 a foot. Well, that's not what the contract rent is. It's $6 a foot. Main Street Square has, if you, below grade, they have 2,060 square feet. They pay $6 a foot for it. They modeled it $9. Our whole premise is, if you look at the actual contract rents, that's how Simpson got to his collective aggregate value. I would suggest that the county's approach of using rents, which if you look at the actual rents versus the model rents, in some regards we're above, some regards below. And I think if you look at it, if the biggest difference that Mr. Sletton had or the county had was the subterranean rents, they are what they are. And I guess I would ask all of us this, would you rather have stuff on the main area or below grade? Below grade, unless you're connected, like I think it's roaming around, it's called down there. They have kind of an integrated store where they have main streets and they also have basement. That kind of makes sense. But if you have an office downstairs, it's pretty hard to find unless you're looking for it. So that's the reason why those rents are less. I would respectively suggest that Simpson's valuation that used the actual rents, he used a cap rate, which is not too different than the county's. He came up with an aggregate for the whole property of like 3.7. If you take off the two parcels that they're not appealing, puts the value on this at 1.7. The rents are what they are. I respectfully suggest that the value that was reached by the local board is correct, and I think the application of the rents that are modeled by the county are incorrect here, because if you look at it, I'm not an appraiser, I'm just a dumb lawyer guy, okay? I don't understand how the rents for where we're getting rents, they're putting a subterranean rent at twice what we're getting. There's no market for it. No one's gonna pay $13 a foot to be below grade. They just aren't. And I think that's the biggest difference we have here. And Rod said that when we had a conversation. He was very professional, like they always are, and said, John, the difference is the subterranean rents. Mm-hmm. So we looked at him, I said, can you give me any data on subterranean rents? And I don't think you guys carve them out that way, but we can't find any support that would suggest subterranean rent should be $13 a foot. In fact, if you look at their model, they're telling you alternative fuel, that rent should only be $11 a foot. Sure. Alternative fuel has a great location. It's right there by the skating rink. But he thinks the stuff below should be higher than that. That doesn't make sense to us, and that's the difference we have today.
I understand. So would you agree that the difference would calculate out with the subterranean rent so we can help us make it?
No.
Okay, there's more to it than that, or what you're saying is, if you applied this $6 to this 3,000 square foot, would that, I mean, if that was the market rent of $6 for all the subterranean rent, would that lower the property value, I guess is what I'm asking?
If I used just contract rents, that would lower the value, yes.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, so, because I understand where you're coming from, and just my experience with, like, property, if you have a house, I know a house in a commercial building, obviously different, but I have rental properties that have basements and rental properties that have upper space. And there is a difference for what you can rent a basement for versus what you can rent
I agree.
the top living score. Even on the value of the property, it's not even close to what the value of the above ground rent would be. So, but I'm gonna open it up to my
Here.
commissioners here. Commissioner Hadcock.
So in our case, we don't change the price, and they either prefer, some people prefer to be lower in spaces, and some people like the windows and all the stuff, so, for us, it's not, any lower or higher, it's the same for the rent, so, I haven't had anybody or had any problem renting the lower end in the basement, and the Rose goes, and there's like one window in the basement. So for me, it's not any different, so.
Right. If I,
Yeah, go right ahead. Yep.
so just to address the subterranean concept, the question was posed, do you specifically have rents that you have in your model that are designated as basement rents? The answer is no, because we look at the quality of every suite, and in that consideration, we're basically ranking them: low, fair, average, very good, excellent. So we're assigning a ranking to it based on its location, whether it's top floor, bottom floor, access, windows, all those things.
Yep.
So we don't have a specific rent for a basement, which was my answer to that question, but we do have a rent, or we have a quality grouping that we're going to put it in because of its location. So if this same office was on the upper floor, it'd get $12, $13 all day. The other property that he had mentioned, 960 square feet, so we're also bracketing these based on their size. There's an economy of scale to consider. If you have a 900 square foot suite, say it's on the main floor, and then you have a 9,000 square foot suite on the main floor, they can look identical as far as quality, but you're going to get completely different per square foot rents because one is so small and one is so big. So his example of 960 square feet is by far the smallest suite they have. It's going to get a little bit higher rent per square foot wise than something that's equal. But if this office that's in the basement were on the main floor, I would have a higher rent to it.
Right, I agree with that. I would,
Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Commissioner
So,
Morris.
one of the things I really appreciated about this was the Ken Simpson's appraisal. I thought he did a very good job with it. I especially appreciated the comments that he included in there from Dan Tribby, which gave a lot of the history of why this even exists. And from that, it's a reminder that the investor that put this all together was not necessarily interested in making an income on his investment. He was more interested in preserving and enhancing the downtown area of Rapid City, which I think he did. And so, as I look through that, I understand that there's value to this, that there's taxable value to the property. But at the same time, I tend to believe that under the circumstances that was done, that I personally am going to give some consideration to the fact that all that investment was not really anticipated to return, to make a return for the investor on that. So, but it was all good information, and I appreciated it.
Commissioner Durr.
Yeah, so getting back to the lease and the square foot, et cetera, that's not the only thing you based your appraisal on, your assessment. So just talking about how much a square foot, what the market in square foot for lease is, what they're actually charging, that was not the only thing to use to make the value of the property, correct?
As far as my assessment of the value?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm considering what they're actually getting, and like I had mentioned, we take those numbers and put them in our model. It actually dilutes our model just a little bit, but these numbers are in our model. our model is going to indicate what is typical for this type of property. So I'm looking at market rents. I'm also looking at market expenses that are through the surveys that we sent out, through interviews with owners. The cap rate is a market-based cap rate, so I'm not sure if that
Okay,
answers
well,
your question. but-
getting back to what Commissioner Hadcock was speaking to about not just going off income-based in that, but you're also looking at sales.
Oh, yes,
So taking the three factors together to get to a number.
correct.
Okay. And I get the sentiment factor as to why a property is there, but we don't, we don't apply that same to a homeowner. And so I get the sentimental value of some of these properties and maybe why somebody has put money into them, but it doesn't change, in my mind anyway, what the value of the property is, so.
I got some unique history on this property and the fact that I was on the city council when they considered the Main Street Square, all this stuff, and how this factors in. I'll leave it up to my colleagues here, but I was in Arizona when they came to vote on whether they build Main Street Square or not. The people that owned the building were philanthropists, I should say, when it comes to the community of Rapid City. They invested a lot of money in Main Street Square. They invested way more money into that building than what it was worth.
$25 million.
How much?
$25 million.
Okay. And that's not even including all the silent philanthropy type things that he's done for the community. And one of the reasons that they built the building was not to make money on it, like Mr. Drews had said. It was simply to have a footprint for the city in the downtown, what was going to blossom the whole downtown. So when someone, if I'm looking at this at any value or coming back and wanting to purchase this building, nobody's going to buy it because of the purpose of what it was used for. It was never meant to be a profit center. I'm sure that if it breaks even, well, it can't break even if you have to pay debt service on it. There's just no way. Destination Rapid City is a downtown. I think it's even a nonprofit organization. I mean, we used to do crazy stuff like have street dances and that type of stuff. Main Street Square, I think, is operated by Visit Rapid City now, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe they're in one of these buildings. $6 a square foot on the bottom. I get the fact that maybe it could be rented for more, and how much, when we look at all the value of this building, yeah, you could say if this building was left to its own devices and it was maybe sold to somebody that wasn't going to use it for the purposes it's intended right now, it probably is worth more money than what it is now in the purpose that it's intended for now. I guess we got to look at that, and how that weighs in is, that's where I'm struggling, because it's like, we're good at no good deed goes unpunished. This is a good deed that was done for our community. I understand, I can't, it's hard to argue either set of these numbers. I think you've often said that it's a good appraisal, it's whatever. The fact comes down to the rents in the basement, and without those, where would those people go? How would the city of Rapid City and the taxpayers subsidize a lot of what's happening in that building? So basically, all we would do is end up giving them another large subsidy to help pay an inflated rent. I don't know that. So it's hard to say that the building's not worth more, but it's also, if you look at the intended purposes of the building, it's serving a purpose. And for it, I mean, the money that's put into it is clearly changed and metamorphosized the city of Rapid City and downtown Rapid City. And so I think for the purposes that it's intended, that it was built for, this makes sense. So I'll go ahead to
Thank you,
Commissioner Hadcock.
and I appreciate that, but if that was the case, then I should be able to drop the rose of the price a lot, because of what we do for our community without sounding, what you said, Ron, is totally straight up, and I can appreciate that. But again, if that was the sentiment, then we would do that for a lot of different people that ended up, changing areas, changing, basically what we're doing for our community. And no one's given the rest of them a discount for that. So I can respect what you said, which is totally
I'll
straight
just
up.
chime in with one thing,
Okay.
Commissioner Hadcock, that most nonprofit organizations in Rapid City pay zero tax.
Yep.
So
Yep, and
take
that's,
that for whatever you want.
And-
If you
and-
just valued the building, it's like, I mean, but I get whatever the law, I mean,
Yeah.
I get that part, but I
No.
want you just to compare oranges and apples because,
well, we work with nonprofits, and we dropped our rents because of it as well. Remember with BMS and some of the local government entities because of what they do for our community as well. So tell me, Rod, what is the difference between, usually we like appraisals. Once we get an appraisal, you know what I mean, we kind of go with that because they actually had someone do it, not that we want to discount what you say. Why is yours different, and why do you think Simpson's has a different cost compared to what you have? How about that?
Sure, it's a good question. The hinge point's really going to be on how did they determine what is market rents?
There you go.
So the page, I think, was 73,
73, I think it is. I think.
73?
73.
So when they determine, okay, because they want to say our rents are market. So how do they determine market rents?
Right.
I gave you a list of 30 leases. None of those are downtown. They are not comparable. And their lowest, which is an outlier at 518, is nearly twice as low as the next lowest. And so they're saying, well, that's the range, and our lowest is actually below the extreme outlier, but we're still going to call it market rent. So what they've said, these are market rents because of all these comps. Well, the comps don't match the subject. The comps aren't downtown, and the comps actually indicate a much higher rent. They're just taking the lowest, which is an outlier, comparing theirs to the lowest, and saying, well, it's market. It's simply not.
Well, that's what I was trying to say, is that if you did that with ours, then ours would be lower, right? If you did that with my weekly motel, which would be the Rose, compared to others, then you'd start doing those outliers because of that, because we drop rents for people or people that have been there for a long time, all kinds of different, that would be low, and then we do high. And then, so you're gonna give me a bigger discount that I have a whole floor like that? You're not, you're still gonna use a comparable, because, see, I get where Ron's saying what he's saying, but I also get that if a lot of other people are doing these kinds of things, you're still basing it on,
Right.
you know, not just one thing. That's why I said, that's why I like it. It's based on all three, just to try to be fair and just in the long run with what the properties are doing, so.
Just a quick point. So we've kind of made the point that the market simply doesn't support some of these rents.
Right.
To make a similar analogy on the sales side of it, what they're requesting to be valued at, if you were to look at the sales page that I have, to request to be valued at $56 a square foot. So if I wanted to find a sale, let's find a sale that sold for $56 a square foot. On my page, I have all the sales of downtown on my page 10. The lowest sale in all of downtown in the last 5 years is $49 a square foot. And if you want to look at that one, it's tax ID 37293. This is the worst selling building downtown. I talked to Mr. Braun, what his plans were with this building. This is what they want to say, we should be valued at the same square foot as this. That doesn't make any sense. That's the worst building, that's the worst sale I have. That entire top floor is completely gutted. He can't get a permit until he does a whole bunch of code improvements and put sprinklers in. This is the worst sale I have, and this is very similar to what they're asking to be valued at.
I just appreciate the work Rod, when you've always done things, that's what I appreciated, and you have the whole packet, you have a lot of the information, and then you're basing it, like I said, on not just one outlier. You're looking at all three, and even my properties are downtown, and you didn't, of course, lower mine, which I'm okay, because then you showed me, and then I looked, of course, in the outlining areas I always trust but verify, you know that by now, treated fairly. So, yeah, meaning mine wasn't the lowest, it wasn't the highest either, but you took it from other buildings around that I seen in the surrounding areas. So bottom line is, when you've done your work, and not that everybody else hasn't in your office, with a commercial, you've been in there a long time looking at and just trying to find basically a fair market value or a fair price for people's buildings. So in this case, I think you did a good job.
I just got one question, because you made the comment that the building would be valued at $57 a square foot, is that correct? If it gave.
That's what they're asking for.
For his number, but then the other building you pointed out sold for $47. That's $10 a square foot difference, so they're really not comparable. But then you also made, so if that's an outlier, I get that, but then you made an outlier number on the rents. You said $5, the rent's $6. So I just want to make that clear to
Sure,
everybody.
my point was, I'm not using this sale because.
Right, no, I get that.
throw it out. It's not
Basically,
comparable.
what I think that these guys are confusing, or she's confusing it with, is that this is a market, this is a, income approach. I mean, you can throw all those other ones in there, and I get that, because if you did a value of what these buildings are worth, it'd be different than what the income approach is, correct? I mean, we're trying to like meld these all into one when we're actually talking about narrowing down the differences between what they're saying and what you're saying, so we make the decision based upon that, I guess. And when we talk
Chair.
about outliers, that's important to note that, and I hope you guys note the fact that we're talking about outliers right now.
Yeah.
But
But would someone actually buy it for 2.7? That's what you got to ask yourself.
But-
Would someone buy this property for 2.7 million? You would. You would, if you could have all those buildings and all those people in those buildings.
I don't know
and
if
sell
they
it
would
for
or not.
2.7 million.
that's not the point.
Let's do a comparable.
What he's doing,
That
what
is
we're
the
doing
point,
is a
Ron.
comparable, and I'm not gonna argue with you. I just wanna make sure when you make your decision,
All
you
right.
based it upon the income approach.
Okay.
Couple questions. So one, I looked at the comparables, and you're right, going back to the Simpson, in the market analysis that you used for rents was not in the same location that we pulled in the downtown area. And that's kind of like a gentleman we had appealing yesterday that does it for a living, and, coming up and saying, well, in Iowa, this is the dollar amount in Iowa. So giving us comparables that are not apples to apples. And so secondarily, my question would be, can you explain, and I think you did, but if you could just capsulate this, the current 24 assessed value on this property is 5.27.
No, the original assessment was 4,016,500.
Of the 24.
No, 24
Oh, I'm sorry,
on
yeah.
your sheet.
Yeah, then you
So-
are correct, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 5.2, and then it's dropping with your recommendation by 2.8 million.
Right.
Okay, so in 2024, the assessed value is, 5.2, and we're looking at a 2.8 million reduction.
Mm-hmm.
So explain the difference of the 2.8 million.
Sure. Everything downtown was all on cost in '24. We weren't sending out our assessments strictly based on an income modeling, because we hadn't done one. So we spent the whole summer walking through every building, talking to as many people as we can, gathering all these rents, sending surveys out, doing interviews. We did that because we needed to get a more accurate way to value these. This was too high at the 5.2. So everything that was on cost is now on an income model, which is much more accurate. So that's why this took this big deduction. That's from the 5.2 down to my recommendation of the 2.7.
All right. And was there an appeal last year at the 5.2?
No.
Okay. All right. I'm going to be good with the 2.7 that you've recommended, so.
So, Mr. Nooney, you had a question?
I'd like to say one thing. I'd like to say two things, okay? You're looking at this process through an inappropriate prism, okay? There's 3 properties there. The way the city allocated the price was an arbitrary way to do it, okay? Simpson would tell you, Mr. Sletton would tell you, these properties are not typically appraised on a sale perspective. They're on an income approach. They're income-producing properties, okay? So it's a little bit skewed when the city, the local board, pardon me, put the valuations, because Rod says, well, this is only worth $50 a foot. Well, you're looking at one building that's a conjoined building, okay? You could not sell the building by itself because the access is contiguous through them. The HVAC is contiguous through them. The sprinkler system is contiguous through them. You have to look at them as a total, okay? They tell you the rents are not correct. The rents on these properties are generally above what they model the rents to be, except for the subterranean rents, and that's what's driving the difference here. I just want to remind everyone, what Mr. Drew said is 100% true. But for Ray Hildebrandt, the porn shop would still be there. We'd have all kinds of derelicts down there on a regular basis. We'd have a bagel shop there. We'd have nothing there. Mr. Hildebrandt made a decision to try to make this city a better place than it was before. And because he did that, we have to look at what the actual rents are. We can't look at the model rents because candidly, their model rents are in many cases lower than the actual rents. So we have to look at them as a whole. You can't pick and choose the good and the bad. I have a hearing after me to it pretty soon, so I gotta shut up.
One more question. So, had the rents or anything changed in the last couple of years?
Only if the contract, these are all, they're actual contracts, they're actual
Why I'm
leases.
saying that is that if those contracts were already there the last couple of years, and you didn't, Jerry's right, and you didn't come in at 5 million or, and say, okay, this is not right, but now, it's at 2,700,000, I guess I'm not getting it, because I know, and I do know Mr. Hillenbrand, he was my friend, so, and I know what he's done. I'm just saying that it doesn't make sense to me that, just a lot of it doesn't actually, on what you're basing on, Mr. Nooney, because if it's such an issue, what was the other couple years? Was it 4 million? Was it 3 million? How long has this been over the 2.7 on rents, and how many, I know the contracts haven't changed that much, because I go in those buildings. Unless they decided it, and I didn't see it, that they dropped people's rent further than what they already did.
But let's not lose track of the fact, Commissioner Hadcock, because someone didn't do what they needed to do, because if you don't come into this appeal board with an appraisal in hand, you're wasting everyone's time, okay?
Right.
Someone forgot to get an appraisal, okay? And they didn't get an appraisal, and when they approached me last year about this time, I said, get an appraisal as of November 1st of last year, because otherwise I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna look like a clown, because I'm not gonna have anything to talk about, okay? With one due respect to what the county did, they told you they appraised this on the income approach. Before we appealed this, they had valued this building, the county valued this building at over $4 million, okay?
Right.
So now they're at 2.7. Well, if they're wrong at 4 million, I think they're wrong at 2.7 too, because the actual rents don't support it. But that's the reality. I mean, the rents are what they are. We can't change them.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd offer a motion. My motion would be to establish it at 2,194,000.
I second that motion.
Yeah, can I speak to that? The reason I did that, that's dividing it strictly in half from what Equalization is saying and which Mr. Noonan is proposing. And to me, I think that's probably more fair than the 2.7.
Any comments on that motion? And the reason I second it is because I did the same numbers and I agree with you. There's probably some room on that bottom, but the other thing is that you could, if we're gonna make an argument about somebody not doing something, first of all, I think that's just on the foundation, it's incorrect. We could make the same argument that they've been overcharged for the last, how many years have they been in this building? You know, so if their property assessment was $4 million, and it's been that way since, what year?
I can't speak to that. I don't
So
know the answer.
that means that they've been overcharged for that whole period of time in comparison to where he's being at now. So if we're gonna make that argument about somebody not doing something or doing something, we need to make a fair and equitable argument. At the same time, I've worked with our assessor. I know that he's on top of these numbers and it makes sense. But I think the one issue where we're coming into an issue is this subterranean rent, finding something that's equitable in downtown that has subterranean rent. It's clear that anytime you have subterranean rent, that it's gonna be far less than what they could get for the top
I
floors.
agree.
And we agree with that. So I think that this is an equitable number, and we apologize for overcharging you for the last 20 years or
Can't change it.
whatever the case may be, so.
That's on
Now, is there any other comments on the?
If your total is 2,194,000, can you do a breakdown for us, like land and structure? Because we have to have that.
Chair,
Yeah,
The land is 278,800,
That's
so
what I'm
just
finishing.
subtract that.
The land is, what, could you, sorry?
278,800.
do you have a
27.
calculator, Gary?
8,800, okay.
so it's fair to say if they thought it was overcharged, that they would have came in and appealed the last few years, Ron, so that
If I
argument.
could
No, I
comment to that?
disagree, you're making it disingenuous. Our own people are bringing forward the fact that they're lowering it.
Yeah,
And
but
that because they
would've said so.
changed, they've actually said, and we've been here where we've raised a lot, we've lowered some. And so what they're charged with doing is being equitable, trying to, that's why they call it equalization.
But that's why I'm saying, if you came in and made my property $5 million, and I thought, what the hell are you talking about? And I would have came in here and said, okay, no way, based on my income and my rents, I'd have argued the hell out of it the last few years.
Well, we're
Now,
not-
all of a sudden, they're gonna lower it to be, I don't know, to make it right, or whatever you say. But someone must at one time, and maybe that's because, in this case, they agree with this to a certain extent, because they did lower it, and because that, if you went from 4 million to 2 million, I don't know. I've just been in the downtown, and I've worked with the downtown a long time, to know, I understand nonprofit, I understand lowering rents, I understand all of that. But I'll tell you, 2.7, buying that building, someone will buy it for 2.7. Now I want to know if they'd sell it for 2.7.
May I comment on one thing?
Yep, Mr. Schlitten.
So just a quick comment on these can't be sold separately, they can be. The comment that it's all one unit, it is not. These are separate buildings, built in separate years. They happen to be renovated about the same time,
Right.
except for K-Pasa. K-Pasa is almost a new build. Behind it there, where the Philadelphia guy was, when he was there, it was $476 a square foot. Now they have a new tenant, it's doubled. So they are getting market rents as they get rid of these old tenants that they've had for a while. That is the market. There would be a discount if you were to value this as 3 to 4 different properties, and someone's going to buy that. There is theoretically a discount that would be applied to that. They are simply pulling out a piece of that big discount. So to say that it's to create a value with multiple buildings that are not interconnected, you cannot get from K-Pasa to this mall without walking outside. You can't get from Wobbly Bobby to this mall without walking outside. There is one corridor between Mitzi's Books and the back of this mall, but they are separate buildings. They're platted separate. The city would require, if this was going to be one building, they would tell you to replat, just like they did with Block 5, and they had to replat the whole thing. So these are platted separately, they're separate buildings, they're built at separate times. If we're to value this as one huge property and then try to pull a piece of that out, no appraiser would do that in the assessor world. These are separate properties to be valued separately on their own.
Thank you. Commissioner Peckham.
No, go ahead.
No, I don't have a comment. Okay, so we got a motion on the floor, and you got the correct numbers, Kara?
I did, thank you
Okay.
very much.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So opposed, same sign.
Aye.
All right.
So we got a tie, right?
Yep.
2-2. So I'm trying to figure out how.
Motion fails, or do we move?
What's that?
I think the motion fails if it's 2-2.
Tie goes to the runner.
What?
No, I think
Whoever
if,
run- We're gonna have, now we're gonna have a race.
no, I think if the assessment today is $1,678,000, that's what the assessment is. Because the local board changed it to that. So if there's not a motion to change it, it's still at 1,678. Am I wrong, Rod? I don't think so.
There was a motion to change it just now.
But it didn't pass, so it's still at 1,678 then, I think.
Shannon.
It's,
I think Mr. Nooney's right. There is an assessed value on the property at 1.6.
That's what the local board put at, 1.678.
So if this board Doesn't change it, that's what the value will be. Obviously, there's a tie in the motion, so nothing happened. It would take another action by the board to change the 1.6.
I think it's 2-2, and it either fails or it can go, or we can wait for Ron, I guess. is a
I'm
good way
trying
put
to
it.
find you had some notes in here for Robert's Rules of Order.
I'd like to make just one quick comment.
Sure.
So in my analysis, what I did is like I said, I took their actual spreadsheet. I simply copied it. I used their actual numbers. This 167 has no support anywhere with any kind of rents. Their rents don't equal that number at all. So if you simply took their numbers, which that's not my opinion, I'm just explaining that the 2.1 is very close to what their actual rents would be using their cap rate, their vacancy. So
So you're
there's
okay
nothing
with
to support.
2.1?
The 1.6, there's nothing that
So
supports that at all.
2.1, is that what you just said?
Right.
What was your motion?
Our motion was 2.19.
2.107.
Revote. Call it again.
Or vote.
Yeah.
Redo it.
We're going to vote to reconsider the vote?
All in favor?
Say, all in favor? Well, let's get a motion to reconsider.
I'll make a motion to reconsider.
Second.
And I've got a motion and a second to reconsider the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Now we'll move on to a
Thank
new
you very
motion.
much. I'm sorry.
We're going to reconsider the last motion, which was Gary's motion, and my second for, Kara, can you tell us those numbers again, just so we get that clear?
Yeah, 2,194,000.
So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sletton. Thank you, Mr. Nooney.
Shannon?
I got that next item on here.
It's a comment, and I know moving forward, for next year, when we go through this, and I've talked to Jordan about it, I've mentioned it to you, that I don't want binders.
Yep, you said
And
that.
that we're gonna everything will be on a digitized agenda, just like we're doing other county business, so.
Yep,
And anyway, but Jordan can help you get set up next year so that all this information is digitized and a little more easier to get through. And the other comment I would make related to that would be, when we know that we have some of these properties, they're gonna be, a little more detailed, like the discussion yesterday with the hotels. That was a little overwhelming for me with all the information to digest in this amount of time. And so when we have those, and I know because I've seen it done everywhere else, it's typically a 15-minute time slot. Can we extend those time slots so that we're closer to an actual schedule?
We're good.
And so if we have a property
I'll talk to you
like this
about it
one that we know, you had a lot of information, it was great, I think you did a fabulous job, so thank you. And, but anyway, maybe, stretch that out on some of these to a half hour if, there's gonna be a lot of talking, especially when an attorney's involved.
we schedule, we've changed the way we schedule over the years, depending on the board. We'll schedule however the board wants, so we'll talk about that throughout the year.
Just things to think about for next year as we go through
Yep.
this process, so.
I think making mental notes is what he's sharing with you, so that, and appreciate Mr. Sletton's, I've worked with him on a couple of things, and I appreciate his attention to detail and providing the facts, so.
Thank you.
And some of these I can't read either, so it's like, these numbers are so small, I'm just like, I don't know where you guys are getting them from. So we'll work on that as a group together and come up. The digitized thing will help everybody, and help you guys, help us, because this is a lot of work.
Yep.
To put these together, I can't even imagine. So, but that'll be for next year, and for now, we're gonna move on and appreciate his comments and appreciate your comments. So where are we at,
Mr.
Shannon?
Nepper is here. He's our next one on the schedule.
He's Nepper Trust, okay.
Yep.
And Nicole's the appraisal. Hi, Nicole. Mr. Nepper, you're number 81.
Morning.
We gave you a
Morning.
number, Mr. Nepper, so you're 81. You're 81 on our, so, I would let Nicole go first, I guess, and then Mr. Nepper will, if you just want to summarize it in basic summary of how you came up with the value, I mean,
Yes, there's just a couple things I want to cover. First, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Nicole. I work for the Pennington County Department of Equalization. This appeal is regarding tax ID 64969. This is a vacant parcel located at 5150 Copper Hill Ridge, which is on the west side of the Chapel Valley neighborhood. The owners of this property are the Nepper Family Trust, including Mr. Nepper here. The trust also owns an improved contiguous property that is used as a summer home on the north of this parcel. The original mailed out assessment was for $90,000 in land value. The local Rapid City Board reduced the value to its previous year of $65,000, which is a 28% reduction. A little history on this property. Previously, it has been flat valued in value, which means that it's set by an overridden value that doesn't change year to year with the market, like the surrounding properties do. We typically use flat values for unbuildable lots like drainage, easements, right-of-ways. This is an improper way to value a typical vacant property. Other vacant areas in Chapel Valley neighborhood that are owned by the homeowners association are zoned forestry, and they're not even flat valued. These parcels have more restrictions, and they adjust with the market. So I just felt like it was an inappropriate way to have this valued. Mr. Nepper has mentioned a building moratorium for the Chapel Valley area. While I understand that there may have been one at some time after the floods, according to the Rapid City Building Services Planner, they do not have a record of a current building moratorium in place. I spoke with multiple planners at Rapid City, and they agreed this to be a buildable lot to the best of their abilities. Mr. Nepper also couldn't produce documentation of such moratorium. While there is a 130,000 gallon Chapel Lane Water Company water tower on the property, covering approximately 3,000 square feet in area, there is currently already a 65% reduction in value in place for the water tower and for the nonconformity. Having personally walked the property, there is a little more than an acre out of the 3.2 that is a possible building site. I provided multiple pictures to you guys inside the binder, along with a map of the property. While having a water tower is not ideal on the property, when this property was purchased in 2016, the water tower was already in place. We have many areas across Rapid City that have water towers in residential neighborhoods, and those areas have not seen an economic interference in the sales. I've provided recent land sales to similar properties with similar topography and size in the hills, showing multiple local sales having a median price per acre of around $54,000, while the subject is at $27,000. I believe removing the flat value and allowing this property to adjust with the market while keeping its substantial reduction factors would be a fair market representation of value, and I recommend that it stays at the $90,000.
I got a question for you right off the top. You said 54,000 per acre.
Is the median of the
Is it-
comparables
okay,
that I got.
So 54 times 3.29 is what?
I don't have a calculator. You have the calculator.
Sorry, I should have asked you to get a calculator. Sorry. And I'll tell you where I'm going. 4
Okay.
times 3.29.
I know without the adjustments, if we were to remove that 65% reduction, the market value is $219,000.
So, but you're 100, that's 178,000.
Right.
If you're talking the medium's 54,000.
Correct.
And so his is, and if you take that times 178,000 and reduce it or make it, you're saying 65% off of reduction? So,
Off of the 219 of what it would be
so it would
without
make it-
that reduction
So
there.
that would make the value and the median, using your same numbers, 62,300, so, but just, okay. Mr. Nepper,
Yes, sir.
we'll let you respond, or,
Of course, our complaint has been every year since we purchased the property. Originally, there's a 10-acre slot that was owned by my uncle. He subdivided the lower 2 lots and then maintained this particular portion. When he passed away in 2011, the state sold the property to the Chapel Valley Water Company because they wanted to put a water tank to balance the one that they have opposite hill over by the Stave Church. After they got all the approvals and everything to build the tank, they agreed to sell the property, the 5100, which was the house and a small portion of the land to us. After that was completed and they completed the water tank, we approached the water board and asked them if they wouldn't sell the rest of the lawn to us, because if they didn't, but then I had every intention to cut the water lines. I wasn't going to mow their grass and sprinkle it and maintain it and everything else. Well, they had agreed, but then came back when apparently a couple of board members said that if they did that, then the property in behind would be landlocked. Well, they eventually then all agreed that they would, apparently they were able to locate this building moratorium that existed. And I guess part of that was a fire-related moratorium. There's 440 homes in that area that are serviced by one bridge. And if that bridge goes out or something else catastrophic happens, then there's no way to get out of the neighborhood. We agreed that when we purchased the 5150, as they're calling it now, the land with the water tank, that we would give them a perpetual easement to not only maintain the water tank, but access to that. There's a 10-inch water line that they backfeed the property to, and we have to stay 20 feet off of either side of center line of that water line going up the hill. So then to say, well, where can you build? Yeah, you can hang over the bank like someone did over the side of Canyon Lake, but I don't know money-wise where someone would agree that that's a buildable piece of property. To us, it's just a buffer zone to be able to have wildlife pass through and everything else. We are working with a builder now. We're in the process of being able to add on to our home at 5100, and eventually we have every intention on merging this property back together.
Thank you. Does anybody have a comment? Commissioner Drews?
Chair, as I look at it, you know, if I got the numbers right in my rough math, you know, if 54,000 an acre, is that what you're basically saying, Nicole, would be?
That was just the median of the comparables that I showed. He would stay at the 27.
Okay, so that's what I used. And based on that 3.29 acres, I think would be about 210,000 rather than the 219,000. And so then you take the 65% off that, and I come up with 74,000.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to actually raise it, or no?
Lower it.
Lower it from 90 to
Well,
74,000.
right now, it's currently 65 from the other board, right? So we'd be going to 74,000, so.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay, anyway, so,
whichever way you say it.
yeah, we have a motion and a same difference, right? So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments on that motion? Mr. Kippen, did you want to chime in on that? We have a motion to go to 74,000 versus the 65 that you had. No comment then? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. So 74,000 is where we're at.
Thank you.
Good job.
Mr. Nooney, we changed yours back. Just kidding.
When you were gone. Someone made a compelling argument.
Now you have to come back up. Just kidding.
Yes, Mr. Nooney is back up representing Rushmore Plaza LLC. This is the former Holiday Inn, downtown Holiday Inn. Trevor will talk to the value that we have on the property and how that works, but I wanted to introduce this, and I was just talking to Mr. Nooney out in the hallway about this. The county was in court over a previous year's assessment on the hotel property downtown, and it was just in court just last year. after that court case, we decided to hire an independent appraiser to set a value on it. And a couple of you were in on that decision that we made late last year. And we've done that. We've contracted with an appraiser. We are waiting for him to deliver a report. There's some delay trading income and expense information. We're also expecting an appraisal from Ken Simpson again on this property, and we haven't got that yet. So both sides are waiting for two independent appraisals. And what I would like to ask is that this board change the local board's value to our assessed value, which is what, Trevor?
19,737,400.
19,737,400. That was the value we sent out on assessment notice. When we get these appraisals, we're going to look at those, both parties. It is the intention of my office that if our appraisal comes in higher, if the appraisal we've hired comes in higher than our value, we will argue for the current value we have on it, because that value is applied using the model we used for all hotels in town. If the appraisal that we've hired comes in lower, we will stip to that lower value. And depending on if the property owner wishes to argue that or not, we might be in court or might not. But it's the intention of hiring an appraiser to do this, that if it comes in lower, we will stip to that lower amount.
So I got one question. What door value did we put on this? We structured all the other ones with the door value per door. Oh, that's a nice building.
105 rooms, aren't
That-
there?
It's 96,280.
That's what this 19,737,000 is? Okay. And there's really
96,280 is where our number.
96,000?
Per room.
280 per room.
288
Per room?
per room. So
And there's 205 rooms, I think.
that would be about, that'd be the highest one we've done then, right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense according, because it's by the civic center.
Location.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
can I ask Shannon a question?
Yeah, you can ask him whatever you like, sir.
So, Shannon, would you explain, I asked you this morning, will you explain, I mean, this includes the building only,
Yes.
so there's no land included with this? Because the land is city land, correct?
The land is owned by the city. It's on a separate parcel. This is building only.
Okay, so are there other tax consequences to the property because of this building being there?
You need to get.
Because of
reduction or
parking,
something.
access, et cetera?
You lost me on that question, so I'll just go into the conversation we
Okay.
had earlier.
Okay,
The parcel under appeal is the building only because the city owns the land. But the law says that if the city or any other exempt entity leases city land for 3 years or more, it becomes taxable. So we have a value on the land in the name of the city, and there will be a tax bill for the land that goes to the city. The assumption is that they'll pass that along to the hotel. We don't know that. But we have two separate parcels with a value on each. The appeal here is just the building.
okay. So, can I continue, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
So, do we know what the amount that we taxed the city for that property then?
I don't know the amount of tax. I might tell you the value of
The value?
460,000.
Joe, if you could pull up 44119, it's right around 914,000, but I don't know the exact number.
For the land, right?
How many rooms, Trevor?
205. 44119 is the tax ID.
$914,800.
Shannon, what's their star rating on this, or whatever you guys call it?
The star ranking is 4 on this,
A 4?
upper mid-scale.
How does that rank in order? I mean, 4 versus what would be the top and what would be the bottom?
The top for our area is 2, the bottom is 6.
Okay, so they're right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're right in the middle.
it's just at the room at the price he said is that amount.
Chair, so yesterday our highest was 106, wasn't it, or 100 or something?
The highest recommendation I had was right around 100,000 per room for the Alex Johnson, correct?
Okay, I thought we
Maybe
lowered it.
maybe 103 for the Courtyard by Marriott.
I thought we lowered it to like 85 or something.
And that was Courtyard by Marriott, I'm sorry, was that the box?
Yeah.
Box over there, okay.
Correct.
So yours was that, what was ours? I think ours was
I bel-
85.
I believe
and
it was 85 for the Alex Johnson.
Theirs is different than 85.
Whatever we set this at is arbitrary anyway, because we're basically getting an appraisal that you guys have already, has the court decided this for you, that was gonna be the deciding factor, or?
No, it was a decision after court that we would hire an independent appraiser to get a value on this.
So what did the court say? I mean, do they, Mr.
address
Nooney,
that?
go ahead.
Sure.
This, I don't want to correct you, Shannon, but this all goes back to the '23 valuation, okay? In '23, the county valued it at $20,735,100. My client appealed it, we litigated it, and the court set the value at $12,130,000, okay? Then last year, the county put it up to $21,048,700. We settled that at $14,500,000, okay? Then this year, it goes back to $19,737. And to give a little flavor to all this, as if it matters, this property right now has been rebranded to a DoubleTree. And those of you that have worked on these motel properties understand a PIP, which is a property improvement plan. The client's in the process of putting about, let's call it $50,000 per room into this property because they had to. The property hadn't been touched for 10 years. Every franchise hotel has this reality, okay? So when you put it at $98,000 a room or whatever you said, $96,000 a room, they're in the process of putting $7 to $10 million in this property, which is between $35,000 and about $45,000 a room. I mean, they have to gut the thing. It's putting bathrooms in them and everything. So the city put it back to 14.5. They took it back to what we settled at last year, okay? If we could avoid having to litigate this again, I'd be really happy if we could get that done. But I understand Shannon's proposal. It is what it is. I mean, you're gonna do what you're gonna do, and then we're gonna litigate if we have to litigate it, because I don't know what Mr. Steinley's appraisal will be. I don't have any idea.
And if it comes in lower and the property owner's happy with it, we won't be in court over it.
Here's what's interesting from my perspective, and this is, kind of goes back to what Jerry told us here earlier, is that we've changed all these hotels to an income-based, per door in regards to the star ratings, all those types of things, with no regard to these PIPs. I mean, it's come up, and I'm not sure that my colleagues understand. Maybe they do, what a PIP is, so, yeah, you're in the hotel business, you understand for sure. But,
Performance improvement plan.
yeah, okay, so they're in the process of this right now, so
They are, it'll go on, around, not to interrupt you, it started like first of the year, and it's gonna run all the way until June of next year. And just so everyone understands, while this is going on, they have anywhere from 10 to 16% of the rooms out of commission, because, I mean, you have to basically close the whole floor, because, I mean, it's not like we're just painting the darn thing.
No, we understand. You
They're
gotta-
gutting them.
close the whole floor, remove the furniture, try to find someone to take it from you.
The landfill.
So, and the fact that you've had a litigation and I'd like to know how they came up with the 14.5 myself, because that's important for us to know. Because our job is, and can someone answer how they came up with the 14.5?
It was just a settlement.
It was just after, because the 23 assessment took a year to work through court. It was just after
Go
that.
ahead, when? No,
The 23 assessment took a year to get through court. So when the court case was over, we were right at this point. And we looked at the income that the property owner provided, and it was just a settlement value for that year in anticipation that we'd hire an independent appraiser to get a value for this year.
So when is this appraisal taking place?
Well, there's both appraisals. So the property owner is hiring an appraiser, and so is the county, and we expected to have them today, but we don't. So we're hoping to have them in the next couple
When did they
weeks.
inspect the property?
Months ago.
I believe what's happened, so everyone's aware of this, is when we started this process a couple of months ago, they asked for financial information, which they're entitled to ask for if they're gonna appraise the property. I have been working with the the state's attorneys, pardon me, and we got a non-disclosure agreement because obviously we don't want this information shared with the general public. We just got that signed recently. I know Mr. Steinley has been on site. I know that for a fact, because he was there last December, I think, or January.
It was there last December.
Yeah,
on
in
site.
December, I believe he was there like before the close of the year. So he's been there. We just finally got this thing worked out between the state's attorney's office and my office. So we're gonna get them the financials, whatever they want. But I'm gonna guess, Shannon, you tell me why I'm wrong, I'm gonna guess it's gonna take him 3 to 4 months at least. That's what it normally takes for an appraisal.
I don't know. I would expect that he's probably got quite a bit done and
May have, yeah.
wait on that, but we don't know. I do know that he requested financial information yesterday, or at least said he was going to.
Okay, I haven't seen it
So,
yet, but that's fine.
We're just working through that trading information process.
So just, what I just said was, if you're starting to take down rooms in January, and I know PIP is basically, you got a different motel.
It wouldn't have
and
mattered
the
if we stayed at the
franchise.
Holiday Inn, it would not change. We had the
Well,
same
I'm just saying
obligation.
franchise-wise, and then they want you to make it into their whatever franchise and what they do. And then it, like you said, it's probably, well, it is 10 years old, they haven't redone it. So they're gonna take down rooms, so isn't it fair to say that if you're doing that, that your income's not gonna be as high as well? So
Correct.
do you take that, I know from our property burning, remember the motel, that the income or the assessment had to be lowered. How do you work that? Or do you guys take that in consideration, or have you seen or heard what they're doing to take some of the rooms down and change it into the DoubleTree?
Yes, and that's all gonna be part of that appraisal we're waiting on.
Okay, thank you, Shannon.
Mr. Chair. So Shannon, do you think there's any chance we're gonna get those appraisals before the 29th?
I doubt that, yeah. I doubt that.
A decision still has to be made at this point.
Yes. My recommendation is that you change the local board's value to $19,737,400. And that gives us the value we had on the property, the way we valued all of the hotels in town. And depending on those appraisals that are coming in, there might be an appeal past this point or not.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Burr.
So what year was it you had the settlement for 12 million and change?
The court made the decision in early 2024, but that concerned the 23, so we'd been a year in the works, okay? And then when that decision came down by the court, then the property had been reassessed, so then the Director of Equalization in my office reached a settlement to take it to 14.5. That was for last year, that was a 24 evaluation. And then for the 25 valuation is at 19, almost 19.7, we'll call it right now, okay? So, our position has always been, the income hasn't changed for this property. In fact, it's candidly gone down. So we're comfortable that the appraisal that is going to come in close to what it was before, but again, we have to work through the process, so.
Okay, and then Shannon, I guess my question to you would be, if you had a court case, 12 million and change, you guys settled on 14.5, then how did we go up another, 5 million?
Because that's the value that we've always thought it is worth. Last year's value, we were just days out of court.
Motion.
If we'd have had 19 million on it last year, we'd have walked right back into court. We need this independent appraisal.
All right.
But last year, we be fair, Shannon, you guys valued it at 21 million. I mean, so.
Yeah.
We had, court set it at 12.3, you guys valued it at 21 million and change, we settled at 14 million. My client is getting, not troubled, they're frustrated to understand how these valuations keep changing when their income hasn't changed. Because unless we're saying the judge was wrong, but they never appealed the decision, so we're very confident that the judge set the valuation right by
In the
statute.
bottom line, when the judge makes the decision, it's hard to argue it anyway.
Chair?
We're going to have a motion here, so go ahead.
So I'm going to take it back to the 4.5, and then if it's lower, of course, then good. But we need to fight for the 19 whatever instead of them fighting for it. Meaning, if the judge put it at 12, I'm going to guess that it's going to come in with the appraisal around 14.5. I think income-based, and just from listening to the conversation, I wouldn't put it at 19 and have to argue that. I'd put it at somewhere in between, and then
Your
based on
motion's-
that appraisal, then that'll come in to where it's supposed to be. I get it, but I think we should start at 14.5, not 19.
If the appraisal comes in higher, we're not going to go to that.
But you can't go to that. I mean, to be clear, you can't, you guys, if the appraisal comes in at $100 million, you're stuck with whatever you've assessed it at. or
Whatever the
this board
decision
puts it
is
at.
here,
And
yes.
I'm good with that at this point,
And that
because
would
of
give
what I
us-
just heard.
It would
Sorry.
give us something to look at next year when you
Yes.
set the value
I
on it.
think,
once you get the
Mr. Noonan,
appraisal.
you pointed out a
We would be
real
looking
good
at it.
position. We're not in the business of bringing you guys to court every other year. We've got some work to do.
I don't know, but you bill by the hour?
I do, my grandkids
there a
appreciate
second?
that.
The appraisal we've
I
hired.
got I second the motion, so, any comments on the motion that we're gonna praise this at 14.5, we'll make them short and summarize them? And then,
I got something to say. If we've hired an appraiser to appraise as of last November 1st, if we look at next year's value, we'll have to hire another appraisal.
But if,
Well,
I think, we'll handle this, I
and
think.
my point would be, you have a baseline, then it doesn't mean you have to hire another appraiser. Okay.
Okay,
I seconded your motion, so,
Yep.
but first by Hadcock, second by Wyffenbach to make it 14.5. So that's the conversation we're having.
So, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Drews?
I think that's too low, but I'm going to vote in support of it because of the circumstances.
Right.
But I do think, I think that we need to give, in the future, we need to give consideration to not only the building, but also if the taxes the city are being billed for the property
Yes.
goes back to Doubletree, I think that needs to be taken into consideration then too.
yes.
Yeah. Agreed on
I
this.
don't know if that's what's happening, but that's,
Right.
I mean, that's
I know,
assumption.
basically, what happens with the Civic Center is they bill the taxpayers for a payment in lieu of taxes. So the taxpayers are paying for that parking lot. They wanted, the taxpayers voted to put that hotel in that parking lot. And so they understood that reality that that's owned by the Civic Center. All the Civic Center's property has a payment in lieu of taxes. They get charged by the city. I don't know what the number is, but they get charged by the city for all the property that they own. It's because they're not collecting a property tax on that property. So it is accounted for, per se, and it's something we should definitely keep in mind. And this is,
All right, brother.
in my opinion, this is like a kind of out-of-the-box situation. We're trying to resolve it without feeling like we're harassing one guy here. That's not our intention. So we're going to we have a motion for 14.5, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries, and when we get this appraisal, I'm sure that we can all have a,
I gotta run to a hearing. Thank you guys very much. Talk to you guys later.
so we'll move on to the next item.
Snyder?
Snyder.
Do we have Mr. Snyder here?
No, this is.
Item number,
Okay, Mr. Snyder's not here. Laura has a recommendation.
okay.
Good morning, County Commission, Laura Jones, Pennington County Equalization. Subject property is 3516 Ivy Avenue, Rapid City. Owners are James and Laura Schneider. The subject property is located in the new Robbinsdale area. The recommended assessment is $382,600. Land value of $58,000, structure value of $324,600 for a total assessment of $382,600. I reviewed this data with the property owner and they're in agreement with this assessment.
That'd be my motion.
I'll second the motion, so we have a motion and a second, so any discussion on the motion?
Could you need that again, Joe?
58,000 on the land, 324,600 on the structure, Ms. Kara.
I got it, thank you.
What was the land?
$58,000.
Yes. 324,600 on the structure, Joe.
Yep.
Any more discussion on that motion?
382,600.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next guy's gonna take us a while, so we better
That's gonna be me,
take
and
a break.
I could come down there and ask for a continuance to the last day. So, it's up to you guys, if that's okay with you. I'd rather move mine out to the last day because,
I don't know that you need to ask for that. It's up to the board,
Yeah, so-
but the board is still meeting next week, so.
Yeah, let's just move it to the 29th.
Yeah,
so
that'd
I
be my
can schedule
motion.
myself in to the next week.
So you're abstaining?
Do you care what time? What time would be convenient for you next week?
9 PM.
7:30?
We won't be here, but 9 PM is good.
Whatever you have open earliest in the morning
Do
to
we have
get
to
it
make a
over with.
motion, Shannon?
No, I
Okay.
don't think you do, no, because
Yeah.
it's just a matter of scheduling it for a later time. We only have 3 or 4, so we'll just
Put me in there.
first or last or whatever, so.
So we have.
I'll be the last, would be fine.
We have an 8 o'clock, a 9 o'clock, and a 10 o'clock. And
Before anybody else shows up. Just put me
Next
at the
week.
last, that way
That-
we can show up at whatever time. Do we have to be here at 8 or if there's nobody
Yeah.
here? Oh, we do.
The first one is expecting to be at 8. After that, there's going to be no schedule, so you'll just be last.
All right, I'll be here, so,
But the first property owner is expecting to be there at 8.
okay. So put me in at 9 or whatever it
And how
works.
about the next one? We're calling them early?
So we need to make a phone call.
I gotta make
this-
some
break.
phone calls anyway.
Norton, we're going to call and see if he's coming in.
Hey, we're on break?
Yeah, we'll take a break. Okay, we're ready to roll, so, thank you.
We got 2 things to do. Dawn has a recommendation on, was it Norton? And then we have the lists that are our recommendations to the board. We'll have to act on those after this one property.
Okay, we're ready to go then, go.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dawn, Equalization Office. This is tax ID 12574. It's number 89 in your packet. I just got off the phone with Norton's today, and they will not be here. I have a value recommendation that they are in agreement with. For the total valuation of $173,300. That breaks down into $133,300 on the land and $40,000 on the cabin.
That'd be my motion.
I'll second that motion, so 133,300 on the structure, 40,000 on the land, right?
Nope, the other way around.
Okay.
133,100 land, 40,000 structure.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
nice
it's
property.
cabin on a very remote property on the west edge of the county.
Okay, so any comments on that?
I'm just gonna say, in that area, when I was 15, I used to cut logs up there.
That's a long time ago.
Yep, a little bit.
That's longer, that's probably longer than I am old, huh?
70 years ago.
Okay. So, Commissioner Drews, did you have a comment, or?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm familiar
So-
with the area, and it's tough to get into.
It's nice, though.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll have, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then the last thing we got to do is, in your binder somewhere, you've got two lists. What is, one of them we call stipulation and the other one is no change. This is what I was talking about yesterday. Our staff talks to every property owner that'll talk to us anyways, and meets with them, look at the property, review sales information, whatever. And if we find reason to change or not change, that's why we got two lists, the assessed value, we tell the property owner, this is what we're gonna tell the board. And if the property owner doesn't want to appear, then they know we're gonna make these recommendations.
Okay.
So I bring these to you, I'm requesting that you make these changes. Commissioner Weifenbach, I gotta point out that on the no change list, one of them is yours.
Okay. So I'll abstain from the whole, because you're gonna do all in one shot, so.
I don't care how you do it.
You can stay.
Deb, you wanna step in and?
Yeah. So I'll make the motion to approve the no change list,
Second.
and then Weifenbach is abstaining. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Now, please, the same thing on the stipulation list, which is actually the changes we're recommending.
And I'm not on that list, right?
You're not, that's
Okay,
right.
Thank you.
I'll recommend to accept the stipulation list as presented.
And I'll second, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Motion carries.
Okay, so, just so you know, you now have changed, or not changed, the assessment of all those properties, and the minutes of this meeting get published in the newspaper, so the public knows what this board did. That's what I was talking about yesterday. No change is made to an assessment unless it's made in a public meeting like this, and that's published in the newspaper, so it's public, everybody knows.
Okay,
We don't do anything under the table.
so we're on recess again till
We're on
next week.
recess again, and
We're done for
29th.
today till next Tuesday,
Yes, sir.
starting at 8 o'clock in the morning.
next Tuesday, 8 o'clock. And if Mr. Roskinek doesn't want to show up.